We are thrilled to have the North Texas Devils sponsoring the Pies Nation podcast once again for season 2026, just in time to celebrate their 5th anniversary as a club. They are one of the best clubs to compete in the USAFL and are still on the lookout for new talent for both their male and female programs in the lead up to the new season. Their aim is to have 2 male teams and a female side compete in the Nationals in Florida later this year. They've got a new coach in Brendan Silva, and their main man, Peter Wood, is a passionate Pies man, and it's why it's great to have their support across the campaign. To learn more about the club or register your interest as a player, click the links in our YouTube bio or podcast description and join the Devils today. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pies Nation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold. I'm Nicholas Sacco, your host for another episode. This is episode 2 of season 8, or episode 204 if you are counting from the beginning. The 2026 campaign is fast approaching, and as opening round against St Kilda being just days away, we can't wait to watch some Collingwood football in the season proper. Today, we discuss our key takeaways from our practice match in Ballarat, give our in-depth season predictions, you won't want to miss those later on, and preview the first game of the year as we face St Kilda under lights at the MCG this Sunday. So much to discuss. Season is just coming closer and closer, and Marcus Callahan and Jack Dugan in the back chat studios. Can't wait to have footy back prim and proper.
Nick, I thought it was yesterday deep into the 4th. My heart rate was pretty high, Jacko. How was yours?
Yeah, it was up there. It was up there. I won't lie, even though it was just a windy, or warm, windy, wet day down there in Ballarat. It was hard not to get sucked in right at the end.
I know, it was just a strange feeling to know that footy hasn't officially returned, but with the commentary and the production on Fox, it made me feel like I was somewhere further into the season with this rainy weather we've been copying in summer as well, Nico. So a bit of a strange start and not a nice feeling to go down to North Melbourne. But I thought what was probably funny was their response to the win rather than ours to the loss being a practice match. But we'll keep that on ice for just another week, and I'm sure 4 points will be coming our way.
Yeah, I mean, for a club like North Melbourne, you couldn't really expect anything less, could you?
No, probably not.
Always going to celebrate that hardcore, but that's okay. We've got a bit to dissect from that match, not too deeply because it is a practice match at the end of the day. I think some of our fans just get caught up in the emotions post-game. Don't worry, season proper starting in a few days.
So no pilot court, you're right.
No, I didn't think we'd go down that path just yet. Let's save it for the real stuff next week, I think. But I did want to chat about a couple of notes that I took away from the match. The first one I wanted to discuss, gents, was Joel Cochran, because there's been a lot of talk about him now over the last fortnight in particular. He caught our eye a little bit in the open training session, which we attended a couple of weeks ago, and has clearly shown some improvement over the last 12 months, and that's fantastic. And again, yesterday or Sunday when we were recording, I still felt like that he showed some really promising signs, particularly early in the match, a few marks in defensive 50, kicked a magnificent goal as well, we should add, in that third term. So that would have got everybody nice and pumped up. No Darcy Moore, no Jeremy Howe coming into the game against the Saints. There's been a lot of chat about whether Cochran is the man to take their place. Is he a bit green, or is he just going to be forced into this team because of the lack of tall depth we've got in our defensive 50?
I think you've nailed it right there, Nico. Is there anyone else to line up in defence who is that type of second defender to come across? Tao Jath, you could probably argue, has a similar physique at this point in his career, probably a bit more of a vertical leap. But I did start to think to myself, he'd had a really nice leg on him on a few occasions despite the inclement weather, and it was like, I think he was actually trying to square that ball up, but it ended up sailing through against the wind too, which was very nice to see. But look, this is probably just going to be one of those baptisms by fire for a guy like Joel Cochran. I just think that based on our stocks, we'll be talking about it a lot this season in terms of tall forwards and tall defenders and our lack thereof, to be honest. So, Jacko, do you think he gets a nod come round 0?
Yeah, it looks like that way, doesn't it, boys? I think what was most impressive out of his game, yes, he did look a bit green at times, a few errant disposals here and there, was able to get on the end of that awesome goal, but he was very lively, and I think that's what you want to see with the young talent, is that you want to see them wanting to be involved in the contest, wanting to have a crack. And yeah, as Marcus just highlighted there, mate, I think by virtue of the fact that our backstocks are pretty slim, especially in that sort of medium to tall range, I wouldn't be shocked at all if Joel Cochran gets his go in opening round.
So this looks like it's going to be the third straight year we go down this path. So we had Charlie Dean a couple of years ago, who we debuted in opening round against GWS. Similar type of hype coming in to that season. And then Reef McInnes, which obviously wasn't a debut, but a debut of sorts in that position, chucking him in the back line from the opening game to try and get some work going there before, unfortunately, doing his ACL, of course. Hasn't featured too much in some of these games either, so not sure when we'll see Reef back. But seeing as this is the third time that we're trying to go down this path, is there any more of a concern than there has been about what's going on in the tool stocks department for our defensive group? Because whilst it's great to give some of these players opportunity markers, I just don't know if we should be flirting with what that looks like as we see our Jeremy Howes and Darcy Moore get to the twilight of their careers.
Yeah, we know from recent evidence that when playing a guy in a key position in particular, like coming in and playing halfback, coming in and playing wing, it's a very different story to lining up on some of the opposition's biggest key forwards, and what that can do for a player psychologically if you have a bag kicked on you early in your career, or if there's really obvious criticism coming your way. And I guess we were calling that out when Charlie Dean was played, and we wanted to see him get a run at it, and perhaps we need to be accepting that if Cochrane is that guy, needs to string a few together before we really start to come down hard. But I guess, yeah, we are in a similar position, Nico. It's just who else is there?
Yeah.
We're going to keep coming back to it. I know once again with us we talked about Ilaro Smith being played out of position in defence. That's not really a viable option, I don't think. And a guy like Oscar Steen, I mean, does he potentially at some point this season, if DC goes down, have to come in and play that ruck role first and then push like Darcy Cameron does into defence to try and cover some of these gaps? So I think that extra man in defence is something the coaches could well be talking about, because we are so young in those tall stocks down back, Jacko.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even if you want to cast your mind back even further, Nico, Henry Shade, Jack Frost back
I had high hopes for Henry Shade. When he did that job on Buddy, I thought he was the man going forward.
But back in day, it's always been a funny position, this, for the Pies, I feel, over the last decade or two, with that, that third tall up. And that's when you lose your main two talls in Howe and Moore, they're required to play a bigger role than perhaps what they would be best suited for. I think with me, we're still such a strange time in our evolution before the start of this season. We don't really know, I don't feel, as a supporter base, where we're at. Yesterday, watching that North Melbourne game, felt like it was, I don't think I've sat down and watched a Collingwood game where I probably didn't know 50% of the players that were on the field at first glance. It really was, who's that? Who's number 45 and all this stuff. So I get a sense that we are just going to have to play blokes like Joel Cochrane and, not just in in defence, but right throughout the lines, give Demetia a bit more of a run this year, who looked okay as well yesterday, and a few boys down the forward line as well. So I feel like, it's going to be very much just a baptism of fire for a lot of the kids, unfortunately, this year. But as we saw in 2021, that was the year that blokes like Bo McCreary got a lot of games under their belt. We weren't travelling that well, but experience in the AFL, playing that, ones level footy every week and playing at that speed, it's worth something. So fingers crossed it doesn't, as Marcus said, doesn't go the opposite way, where if they do get an absolute bath, then they're confident shot, and then you're just sort of rebuilding from ground zero week after week. But I've got a feeling, just seeing what I saw yesterday, there'll be a lot of kids getting their first games this year.
Well, speaking of promising, I saw that a lot from Jack Buller in the forward line. I love the way that he was constantly a threat inside forward 50, moving around quite a bit, finished with 2 goals and 7 score involvements. As I said, always on the move. Great pressure inside 50 as well. I think our pressure overall was fantastic for such a young group. We really did, put North Melbourne to the sword on a lot of occasions there. But for Jack specifically, he looks all but set to put on the black and white for our opening round this week, which is very exciting. We spoke a little bit last week about not trying to put too much of an expectation on him, but I have to say, from what I did see on Sunday, there's a lot to like.
Yeah, for sure. And again, he's a bit of an unlikely looking guy for a key forward. He hasn't got the biggest leap on him, but you can just tell he's a bit of a mongrel. And I think he's got a bit of that dog about him that we will welcome well and truly with a guy like Brodie Myercheck coming out of our forward line. So there's no question that he'll have a big question mark on his head about how much supply he can create for us this season as he tries to make that position his own. But like many other guys in our forward line, we're just going to have to be patient, I think, across the first 6 to 8 weeks of the season. And while we might be ruining missed opportunities, or why did he do this or why did he do that? We're just going to have to keep a lid on it, I think, Jack, before we really start to see what these guys can do functioning in a new team like Jack Buller.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's still quite young as far as I'm aware,
24.
Nico. And I think the concern often, especially with these young, tall key forwards, is the size element. But I still felt like Jack Buller had a pretty big presence in our forward line yesterday. So now I think the question for him is, like, is he going to be able to sustain that over the course of 4 quarters, week in, week out? And that's going to be a tank thing that he's going to have to develop over the course of his career. We know Brody Myercheck, that was his bread and butter, just kept showing up contest after contest after contest. And often what you see, I feel like, with these young, tall key forwards is, yes, they can have, short bursts, but they do go out of games quite quickly. So that'll be the watch for Buller this year to see. I think he's got the presence about him, definitely has the size. As you said, Nico, I love that call about him having a bit of mongrel, which is what we love to see, especially down forward. But is he going to be able to sustain that over 4 quarters for the marathon that is the AFL season? Only time will tell. But again, going back to my point before, this season could just be about building that continuity up, building that tank up for a lot of these young blokes. And we might not see the fruits of it this year, but I think in a few years to come, experience is worth its weight in gold.
Pretty solid from the forward line overall, I felt yesterday. Very accurate, which you pointed out to our group chat yesterday.
Yeah, if that doesn't scream that we're going to kick 3 goals, 17 in opening round, I don't know what does.
But Dan McStay, I thought, a nice little confidence booster for him. I know it's a practice match, but 3 goals, looked pretty strong in contests. Do I take much from that North back line? Not really, but some form is better than no form heading into opening round.
The thing I actually like the most about what I saw from Dan McStay was Harry Demetia. I think he's the type of guy who gets the ball, runs, and he just sort of lights up and he just puts it on the boot, but perhaps needs to take a little bit more time to get that composure at the senior level. We know he won the BNF at VFL, so he can clearly do it. But what happened was, late in the game, Dan McStay sprayed him after a kick went left when it maybe should have gone right. And I haven't seen that from McStay before. And I thought to myself, okay, where the hell has that been? Like, get a bit more evident in your presence, not only to the opposition, but also your teammates. Tell them where you want the ball. I've always found Dan to be quite placid in the way that he plays the game, but without Checkers there, without Coxie there, does that make him the big guy alongside Buller, who's really there to be that authority? Because up until this point in his career, I haven't seen that sort of like kick it over here, kick it over there. Yeah. But I need to see more of that, Jack.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, mate. I think the biggest gripe that we had with him last year, and there was a fair bit of criticism that came his way last year. We don't expect a bloke like Dan McStay to come out, although you might have last year, Nico. I think tipped him to kick out most goals, maybe, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But we don't expect him to come out and kick 50 goals a year. As much as we like him to, that's just not a thing that key forwards do at Collingwood anymore, I don't reckon. But what we do require from him is what Marcus is talking about, his presence. And we just didn't get enough of that from Dan McStay last year. So it's presence at the contest, it's presence just leading, giving the midfielders something to kick to. And again, presence in the way of leadership as well, which even though he had a leadership position last year, perhaps, it was a little bit missing. So he's not, we're going to get into that a little bit later. He's not the player I've picked to have a big year, but he is going to have a big year in that sense, I reckon.
On that, Nico, do you feel that omission, which we mentioned who came into the leadership group last week.
Yep.
We didn't talk about who came out. And I think we just need to spend a moment on the fact that, is this something that Dan McStay needs to take personally, and even without that badge, try and utilise that as motivation to become the person that we want him to be in that forward line? Like, once again, 6'5", 100-something kilos, like, own the forward 50, Dan. You know you can do it. What do you reckon, Nico?
Yeah, I mean, he had his injury struggles last year, which everyone's aware of course, but the reality was he was dropped heading into that final series on form, not from his injury per se. And I know he would have been disappointed with that, and that probably was the catalyst to him not becoming a member of the leadership group in 2026. There might have been some other factors, not saying Shooter definitely didn't deserve to be in that conversation, and I'm glad that he's got that role. But yeah, it potentially can serve as that motivating factor for Dan, particularly with no Brody Myercheck and no Mason Cox in that forward line. Somebody needs to take the mantle. We've been crying for Dan to play that role for many, many years. He's had it in spurts. He's obviously won games of his own boot for us. Very pivotal in that 23 final series, which we can't forget. At the same time, it's the consistency factor now that we need to see from Dan. And hopefully this is the kick up that he needs to play a bit more consistent football.
Because if you're Dan McStay, right, like, surely you have a chip on your shoulder with that. Like, you've come over to the club on pretty big money. You've obviously had a horrific run with missing finals for various reasons, but I just think that we've cleared the runway for a big guy like him. Like, no one can really get in your way. Coxie can't get in your way. Checkers can't get in your way. Like, there's even Tim Membry to an extent shouldn't be getting in his way. Like, this has got to be the final call for Dan McStay, or I do start to worry about what his future looks like at the Pies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I was just going to talk to that consistency piece, Nico. It was highlighted in the commentary yesterday, not just at the Pies, but I think indeed over the course of his career as well at the Lions, is the fact that, he does have this ability to take these incredible contested marks, be a presence, but then, being able to piece that together and take it into, games in the coming weeks, in the following weeks, sorry. He hasn't quite grabbed that. So, presence and having consistency of presence is what we're looking for Dan.
This is the year. This is the year for Dan, so hopefully you can pull it through. 2 more quick notes on this game. One of my biggest gripes, and the example you gave about Dan McStay is a great segue into what I'm about to discuss. And I was probably the most disappointed yesterday about our lack or our poor decision-making, particularly in the second half from a lot of players, both senior and inexperienced. As soon as the rain came, I felt we panicked a little bit, shifted the way we were trying to move the footy, because there were a lot of short kicks that we were trying to build up before lowering the eyes and going inside 50, which worked to a T throughout the first half, and that's great. But the rain came in, it was slippery conditions, we weren't holding our marks, and I just felt like we lost our way quite a bit. Josh Dacos, great that he had the number of disposals that he did, but too many times just putting the ball on the boot without looking at what was ahead, or as I think was mentioned in the call as well, calling for the football in positions where he's either under extreme pressure or it isn't the right option for us to be moving that ball forward. There was a few times I felt he was really, really poor with his decision-making. Ed Allen was another. I really liked his game yesterday, but again, I feel like the thing that lets him down and that difference between him taking the next step to playing regular football in the senior side is his decision-making. Multiple times I felt that he was, again, just getting the ball and putting it on his boot and hoping that someone was going to fly up and take a mark. He just doesn't take that extra second for me to make a proper call, which for a man in his position, that probably needs to be right up there in his game. Once he can start to develop that trait of his performance, then we might see a different version of Ed Allen. He has improved, but I still think that's a big flaw in his game.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm really glad you've brought up Ed Allen, obviously winning the best young player last season, and has clearly taken strides, but I still think he's at a place in his career where he needs everything around him to, like, the tap needs to go right down his throat, and then he needs a bit of space in front of him for him to, like, utilise his exploits, particularly his acceleration from the contest. But if, there's a little bit of a step one way and then the defender catches him, like, then the handball just kind of gets popped out and you don't really know where it's going to go. So it's that poise that he needs to develop this season, Nico. Yeah, he needs to have a bit more composure around the contest, because we're going to need him in the clinches, and we'll want to get guys like Ned Long and Angry Anderson firing out handballs to your Nick Dacoses and your Ed Allens. But if he can't also develop that part of his game, I do worry, because I think he can be a midfielder for us, perhaps playing on the wing too. But I think that you've really highlighted an important point, because when the rain came, his game seemed to dip a little bit.
And he wasn't the only one. I'm probably just highlighting him more because there's a bit of an onus on Ed to try and hold down a regular spot in your senior team. And you just probably notice those things a bit more for a player like him than you do others.
Yeah, we'll put him under the spotlight, and there's plenty of others to go along with him. But you're absolutely right. It's a critical season. There's probably some other guys we'll discuss later in the season, later in the pod, Jack, that will also fall under the microscope as needing to take that next step. But anything else from Ed Allen's game that you noticed that was worth noting?
Not necessarily Ed Allen's game, but more to the just kicking in hope, Nico. It's a funny one, because I cast your mind back to last year against Hawthorn, for example, where we just got shut down all over the park. And one of the reasons why, we were just getting swarmed is because we've just had an inability just to get the ball moving and get the ball, going. And yes, it's not going to come off all the time and you'll get hurt going the other way. But 2023, that's what we built our game. 2022 and 2023, that's what we built our game under Fly McCreary when he first came over. It was pressure. pressure, and it was just willing the ball forward time and time again. So I just wonder if there was a bit of a direction in this game, or maybe even as the wet weather came, whether the instincts took over and it was just like get the ball forward at all costs. Yes, there could have been a lot more polish about it, especially from senior players like Josh Dacos. But I think, I don't mind saying that. I'm to play devil's advocate. I'd much rather see that style of footy, get the ball forward at all costs, and then have to defend something coming the other way quicker with more of a chance of gaining territory than trying to be too cute.
Yeah, and I don't think we needed to remain trying to have those dinky little 15-metre kicks as we try to build the ball forward. But I would have liked to see a little more structure from that defensive unit when the wet weather came. All good to try and push the ball forward and, get there at all costs. But in a practice match when there's no points on the line, that's the perfect opportunity, especially for a younger group, to experiment with a couple of those things. If we had have lost by 3 or 4 goals, but we take away something from, okay, this is a scenario that we can probably implement when these conditions appear again, that's as much of a win to me as anything. I just feel like, and the word's poise, and I'm glad you put it up because I couldn't think of it for the life of me, but I think that's what we need to show a little bit more of, regardless of the opposition, and I just felt that was a better chance to try and experiment with it a little bit more. Yeah,
once again, so many senior heads missing and losing shape and structure, particularly with guys like Howe and Moore out of the side. I think we just need to probably... Again, we're on our Pies pod and we're into it and we're passionate, but 100%. Just putting a lid on how much we read into it, because we're never going to see that team on the park that we saw in the last quarter in this season.
Point,
yeah.
But also, even though we lost, I thought there were large periods of the game where I was really impressed, despite not having all that senior personnel, how good we looked. Yeah. And it made me excited. It was a bit of pill to swallow at the end, and practice game, but in the moment, you're like,
of course.
You just want to win, and especially going down by a point. But I was really impressed with a lot of our young brigade's ability to have control of that game for a fair amount. And then there seemed to be a lot of changes sort of halfway through that third quarter, after half time, and it doesn't matter what game you're playing, if you change your team halfway through, quite often you can't keep that, can't keep the ball rolling. So lots of positives and a few little negatives to take out of yesterday's game, Nico.
Very, very last point as a player focus before I do move on. I think Bo is ready to be a full-time midfielder, and we saw that to a T yesterday. One of the most explosive players I've ever seen pull on a black and white jersey. I know that we've seen it many times over the last few years, but gosh, it's so exciting watching him burst out of that midfield the way he does. His speed, his ability to put pressure on opponents. I mean, that is exactly what we're crying out for, to have in that midfield setup. If his only hurdle is his health and his fitness, then he can be one of the best players, one of the best midfielders in the competition in years' time.
It's a very interesting call, because you look at him and what he's brought to our forward line, and it's defensive pressure that we know and love Bo for. So why can't that show up at the stoppage, where all of a sudden with a Bo McCreary around, you've got less than that half second to make your disposal, and he's on you. Like other midfielders that we've grown to love that are starting to age just don't have that power and explosiveness at the contest. So I always saw Bo probably playing more forward in his career, a bit like Bruz has played defence, and there was probably a few seasons ago we were like, is Bruz going to come to the midfield? And he hasn't. So I think Bo probably hasn't kicked a lot of goals in his time at the Pies, and he's now inviting that conversation of, even though he can get the ball forward and he's fantastic at breaking lines, like when he gets out into open space and he just kicks the ball and then picks it up, it's bloody awesome to watch, and we're going to need that from him. But is there a world this season and next season where he's playing more midfield minutes?
I hope so, Nico. I'm so glad you brought this up. I've been calling this for quite a while. I think periods last year, looking to midway through the year, just before the bye and just after, he got a lot of run through the midfield, and just having him as an option there for both ways, for the two-way running. I feel like sometimes if you got Dacos side bottom and De Goey in there, a lot of them probably offensive-minded players. That's not a criticism of them, but when the ball gets one the other way, we have an ability just to let it sort of flow out. Someone like McCreary stops that, because not only do you have to watch him from bursting away with the ball, you've got to watch him on your tail going inside your own forward 50. So massive fan of Bo McCreary. That the idea of having like Darcy Cameron, Nick Dacos, Bo McCreary, and then a Pendlebury or a Sidebottom floating through there, I think is it's a mouthwatering prospect, mate. And what it also, we spoke about this before, that could mean that a De Goey spends more time resting up forward,
Yes.
and we know how damaging he can be down there. So I very much see a world where Jordan De Goey and Bo McCreary might be playing, a bit of tit for tat forward midfield.
Yeah, I like it. Much to look forward to from our grand final sprint winning champion. Let's get. I'll leave it there. Hey, you can't forget that the premiership's there, but grand final sprint. That's
Top of the resume.
that's
Back to back, if I'm not mistaken. Was it 20? Okay.
He got ripped. All right.
No, but he won the flag and then won the grand
Yes.
final sprint, didn't he?
Yeah, the next year. So
Just knows how to win on the big days.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Let's move away from Ballarat, North Melbourne. We don't have to worry about that place ever again. Well, not maybe ever again, but for a while at least. All right. Sorry to our Ballarat Collingwood fans. Predictions. It's probably my favourite part of the early stages of the year from you guys. I love hearing what your predictions are. And I love even more so getting to listen to these back at the end of the season to see how close we did, or maybe in this instance, not too close indeed. We were probably 50-50 last year in these predictions. Some that were pretty good, some that were very average, but that's okay. That's what it's all part of the fun, part of the external footy media, because every man and his dog is also doing their predictions. And I thought we would also jump on the bandwagon once again. All right, you know how this works. Marcus, Jack, let's get into it. We'll start with our ladder position. Where are we finishing this year?
I've got a 7th, fellas. I think we round out I think we finished top 8. We don't have to do the wild card situation, but I think we are just there right at the lower end of the 8, and a season where we'll probably still expect us to win more games than we lose to qualify. But ultimately, I think that with the changing shape of our list, there's just so many moving parts at the moment. And I look at other teams that have a much more grounded and experienced shape of their lists, and I just can't be brutally honest and say that we're going to be there on the last day. So maybe an unpopular opinion to start, Jacko, but where do you have us landing?
Yeah, if that's unpopular, mine's going to be really unpopular as well, Nico. I've got us 10th. 10th? Which is a long way from our season that we've just had. I just think there's so many unknowns with how we're going to go this year, and being the pessimistic so-and-so that I am.
Let's have hope at this time of the season.
I know, but to your point, mate, I think it was often when you do these predictions at the start of the year, you do get sort of the blinkers on and focus just on your own team. And I think what people forget is that you actually got to look at where other sides are at in comparison to where you're at in their evolution of their list, as Marcus said. And just going through the list of AFL teams, I just think the teams that I sort of see is in and around the same mark. Obviously, you've got your Brisbanes and your Adelaides, Geelongs, who most people have them as top 4. Are we at that calibre still? I'm not sure we are, unfortunately. And then the teams that are sort of priming themselves up, ready to go, Freos, Gold Coast Suns, Bulldogs, who I think will be very competitive this year. I just didn't quite have us up there. And I think ageing list, I can't believe, after defending it for the last couple of years, I'm now using it as a reason, but I do think it's now really getting to the point. Jeremy Howe not starting the season probably feeds into this a little bit. I worry about his ability to go the journey throughout the whole year, and then within that the ripple effect that not having blokes like Howe out there every week, managing blokes like Sidebottom and Pendlebury every week, we're very much at this tipping point of our evolution, and there's just so many unknowns. Look, who knows? We could find a system. We could just pick up where we left off last year, but I know there's been a lot of commentary around this, which I don't necessarily agree with. But if you look at the back end of our form last year, after having such an amazing start, just waiting for it to turn and waiting for it to sort of come good, and it never really did, which to me speaks to just like a slow death is a bit dramatic, but sort of a slow grinding halt to this semi-golden era of Collingwood footy that we've had so far under Fly. So I'm going, the pessimistic option. I believe 10th still gets us into the wild card round.
Can we make a run from 10th, you reckon?
Look, I don't know about run, but yeah, look, I think if we finish anything above 10th, we'd take that.
But if you've got us finishing 10th, does that mean that we would lose? Because who plays who with that wild card?
We play 7th, I think.
Sorry?
No. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we play 7th.
Seventh.
So
and then
if you
eighth
lose if you finish 10th for the overall season, that means you've lost one of the wild card games. Is that?
There's only one wild card game. You win, you're in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 10th plays
gets you into the wild card. Yeah.
So that's how it would work. No, sorry. Yeah. So we'd play 7th.
Yeah.
Can't believe I'm even thinking about what we do if we.
And is that in the bye week? How does that work?
Yeah, it's in the bye week. Guys, we're finishing 5th. That's my prediction.
Okay.
We're finishing 5th.
Oh, great.
It's going to rely on a bit. Don't get me wrong. I look at us, and it's understandable to have Collingwood in that middle pack of sides where we're going to be contending against some of those teams that are trying to get into the top 6. So you look at your St Kildas, you look at your Bulldogs, GWS. I put Adelaide and Fremantle in that conversation. I don't think Freo are going to go that well this year, to be totally honest with you. But I think if we can be better than all of those middle range sides, there's no reason why I can't see us finishing in the top 6, and then 5th is just probably a bit of an optimistic view. Everyone talks about obviously Brisbane and Gold Coast and Geelong, and they're the top of the top, and it's going to be a very hard place for us to reach that level of football in 2026. I really do believe that. But I'm just going for a more optimistic approach where a lot of things go right this year. We don't have too many injuries to worry about, because I still think that if our injury list stays relatively healthy, then we are still one of the genuine contenders of the competition. It's a massive if, I know, and the older list is obviously going to play a part. I think the fact that we rested a lot of senior players before opening round is a little bit of a worry. I know Kane Corn spoke a lot about it this morning. And
so don't speak of it.
He'll sensationalise everything, so I'm not going to get into that area.
Sensationalised stuff.
I know, unbelievable. But I look at GWS, I look at Freo, I look at maybe even Sydney, the Bulldogs, and I look at some of those sides and thinking, I think we can be better than all of those teams. And if we are, maybe even Hawthorn. I know we've had our struggles, but I also almost put them in that category. But if we're better than all of those teams this year, then we're a top 6 side.
We are, but coming back to the if piece, I think that it's...
Is it too big of an if, you think?
Yeah, it's probably a bit far-fetched to say that we're going to have a side on the park that resembles the best 20-ish players each week, knowing that we are starting the season on the back foot and knowing that there are not only the injuries that come with an ageing list, but also the rest factor as well that's going to be required for some of those guys who actually are injured at the moment anyway. So I love your optimism, and you've probably kept some people listening, Nico, which is great.
That's not why I did it, I promise.
After mine and Jack's probably saw the viewers start to hit stop. But I want to be that person that's optimistic, but I just feel like we have given this such a good run with this list, and we have absolutely taken every drop that we can from these guys who have just given so much to us. And it's going to come a point where the wheels start to fall off. And I'm not saying that is the overall result of our season. Like, I still think we can be a competitive football side, and we can be that annoying team that stops other teams from having the runs they want to have. It's just, can we show up week in, week out, like 2022, 2023, where we didn't have a lot of players coming in and out of the side. You know, it was very, very, again, a grounded football team. So without that, like, do you still think that if we're debuting a lot of guys, and we're going to get to this in a moment, and we've got guys that we're talking about potentially this season being their last, that we've got enough balance and enough consistency with the same team to finish 5th?
Yeah, I think the depth is certainly stronger than it was 12 months ago. I really do like some of the players that have shown signs over the last 6 to 12 months to fill those holes. I think obviously you're naive to think we're not going to be resting Pendlebury, Sybon and Howe for large durations of the season.
Elliott might have a spell.
Yeah, potentially. Tim Membry's another one too.
Yep.
So, yeah, you would suggest that because there are going to be multiple unforced changes, that it might play a bit of a role into what that consistency level looks like. I just still think we're a really good team on paper, and a naive way of thinking, when you've got the best player in the competition on your team, I just can't see us finishing as low as 10th. That's my only thing. Now, obviously, I could be put right back in my place after 6 rounds when we're 0-5 or 1-5, but I still don't think we're at that stage just yet.
Yeah.
I do think we've got another run in us.
Okay.
We are going to find out a lot about ourselves in the first 5 rounds, Nico. I mean, we talk about these teams that we feel like we're sort of in and around. You know, are we better than them or not? St Kilda first up, Adelaide second up.
Well, hold on. Do you want to do the record after first 6 games now then?
Yeah, okay. Well, I was just going to say, we're going to, like, all these teams, barring Brisbane and then Carlton, who we don't even want to talk about on this podcast, but Freo, Giants, Adelaide, St Kilda, all within our first 6 games of footy. These are all teams I feel like we're going to find out a lot about where we're at in terms of, because they're doing this, we might be doing this, or are we keeping up with them? Who knows? We're gonna know a lot about the rest of the next couple of years, I reckon. By April.
So Saints at the G, Adelaide at the G, Giants at Marvel, Brisbane at the Gabba, Freo for Gather Round, Carlton at the G. That is the first 6 games of our season. How many wins are we getting out of that 6?
I've gone 3 and
3 with losses 2.
I was doing this in the car on the way here, once I parked, and with the injuries, I'm really concerned about, coming back to what we were talking about last week, our aerial presence in defence and how we're going to have younger guys lining up on big forwards. I'm really quite worried about that, Nico. So I think losses to the Saints. Who do we have next week?
Adelaide.
I think, and Adelaide, because they've got the 3-headed monster down there still, don't they, with the big Adelaide forwards. And then the other loss to
Brisbane.
I think we go over and do a job on the Lions.
So we're losing to either Freo or Carlton.
Freo.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, I had
Jacko.
losses. I had the same, Nico.
3 and 3.
3 and 3 with losses to Brisbane, St Kilda, and the Giants on the Friday night, because it's just, I don't know, it's just that it gives like, I remember that game, like 2021 or something against Brisbane on the Friday night. Lost after
Giants,
the sign.
I know we got. Oh no, Brisbane. Sorry,
it gives that vibe. I reckon. Just like, I reckon it'll be a really competitive game, but I reckon they might just pip us, and they kind of have our number a little bit recently, the Giants. So that's who I had losses to. We won't lose to Carlton because I'm pretty sure that is Pendles' record-breaking game.
It
won't be yet. Okay.
Hawks.
Well, in that case, danger. That's what I'm basing my opinion off on that game. But yeah, 3 and 3, which was similar to what I think I was doing last year, and we went 6 and zip or whatever we
5
did.
and 1,
5 and 1. So, who knows? I don't know lots about stuff usually, so
that's funny.
yeah, could be wrong.
Danger.
I went 4 and 2. Again, with my optimistic view, we're beating the Saints, we're beating the Crows. If we can't beat the Giants in Victoria with the injuries that they've got, they're not even in finals contention at this point of the season.
See, I don't. Yeah.
No Tom Green, no Finn Callahan for a little bit. Sam Taylor's currently out with an injury as well. That looks to be short to medium term. Jesse Hogan's got some injury struggles coming into the season. Toby Green, I know he played State of Origin, but there was some niggles with him heading into that game.
But it's at
There's
Marvel.
a few others I can't remember. I know it's at Marvel, but realistically, if this is the team that's going to be in contention that I think they will be, there's no way we drop that. We cannot possibly drop that game against GWS, and if we do, that's when the alarm bells will ring. I do think we'll lose to Brisbane at the Gabba. I've tipped them to win the flag this year and go 3-peat. The danger game is the Freo game, especially at a neutral venue in Adelaide. I'm still scarred by the loss we had to the Dockers at the G last year. They are meant to be a side on the improve, and if they culminate to that, then I don't think we'll beat them. And then Carlton's a given. And I didn't even bother doing Anzac Day because that's going to be about 20 or 30 goals. So, yeah, I went 4 and 2. Again, optimistic, I know, but I just think that there's games there that we should win. Regardless of the injury, regardless of the age demographic, resting players and what the side looks like, the bias in me says I just really think we're better than those teams. So
I hope you're right.
Yes.
Me too.
Copeland Trophy, are we spending much time on this?
I just wrote Nick, and if he's not fit, I had Bruz as a smoky.
Sure.
Maybe. Yeah.
That's nice.
Nick and Josh as a smoky.
Yeah. Nick and no smoky, he'll win it. Leading goal kicker?
I wanted to do something different, but I was just trying to be realistic. Again, unpacking what's happened in the last 6 to 12 months. We've lost Brody Mychek, who's been one of our all-time favourites as a goal kicker in recent years. Bobby Hill was another one who was there and thereabouts. So we've lost a lot of supply in our forward line just in those two players there. Boys, Coxie, even though he wasn't kicking big bags, in particular those latter years. But I can't go past Billy, and I really can't go past him purely because the only other reason I think Timmy Membry could do it is if Bill Touchwood gets an injury, but there's just no other guy who's going to be playing closer to goal than Jamie Elliott this season. So boring, but that's my honest answer.
Exact same for me, mate. I tried hard to find a way of where we might get consistent goals throughout the whole year, and I just think if Jamie Elliott can stay on the park the whole year, that's pretty much a foregone conclusion. He's too smart around goals. He knows when to bob up, and really, and it's crazy to say, but last year was in the form of his life, just about. Yeah. So, I think Jamie will have another really solid year and probably take that out.
Yeah, so Jamie as well, he might get a bit more respect from opposition this year, considering the season he had last year, but he has looked incredible this preseason. Not that you can obviously read too much into it, but touchwood, there's
Training
been no
the house
injury.
down, Nico.
Yeah, well, let's not go that far. But touchwood, he hasn't had no injury concerns in the off season. Flawless preseason, just about in my books. Obviously didn't play yesterday, but he looks primed and ready. So I think he's got another 60-goal season in him for sure. My favourite one. Who is it a big year for in 2026?
Oh, there's so many, hey, at either end of their careers. So we've talked about Dan McStay, talked about Ed Allen, and I think it's time to talk about Dan Houston. And obviously last year we were feeling very underwhelmed by the end of the season after a very prized recruit and another year of giving up draft picks. And we've talked for seasons about the danger of doing so with Tassie coming in. And it's getting very close now, gents. Like, it will be not too long from now where we're saying Collingwood's playing Tassie in round whatever, which is fantastic for the competition, but not great if you're looking to get pedigree draft picks, because they'll just do what G-Dub and Gold Coast did many moons ago now. So Dan is one of those guys I think would be putting as much pressure on himself as anyone. Not that we want to overinflate it, but when you've played all of Australian, when you've won best and fairest in another club, Jack, there comes an expected level of performance with the price tag and the portfolio that he put together before coming to the Pies. And I think that if Josh does play a bit of halfback, which we saw on the weekend, whatever's happened in the off-season that we're not privy to needs to show a better level of cohesion as who's the guy as that quarterback who's going to be given that license to break the lines and be creative with their kicks. I still think either of them can do it, but Dan is clearly the one who's played more halfback across the journey for his career, and I don't know what his role actually is, but he needs to be more accountable as a defender. He needs to be more disciplined as a defender. And we still want to see him make the amazing passes over 60 metres, but there's a lot of areas for improvement for him this season, Nico.
On SEN Breakfast last week, Fly was on Wednesday, and he said that they just want to get the ball in his hands. They want to get the ball in Dan's hands because they know what he's able to produce when he's got the footy and he's got time and space. So you do wonder what that positional shift looks like. Fly sort of flirted at some potential options as more of a permanent midfielder for him this year. But I agree with everything you said there, Marcus. I think this has to be the year that he goes to another level.
Yeah, he needs to. There's no doubt about it. I mean, as Marcus said, we gave up a fair bit for him in the current climate with Tassie coming in, and we need him to perform. Dirty's probably not the right word, but I was very frustrated by him.
Missed games.
By him last year. Yeah, and then the other thing as well, a little bit kind of similar to following the shooter arc in the first year, a few errant sort of tribunal things as well in there. But I think the biggest thing for Dan is he's come from a side where, and this is no offence to Port Adelaide, but where, he really was the main man back in that halfback, in the team. So probably given a license not to have that accountability that we speak of, but coming into a side now where you're lining up alongside Josh Dacos, our Isaac Quainer, Braden Maynard, and you're working as part of a premiership winning system.
Correct.
You need to assimilate with that to a certain level, and that means sacrificing your own game. That means not getting the flashy disposals on the link of a 1-2-3 handball chain. So for mine this year, it's going to be about not so much about where we can fit Dan into our system. It's where Dan can fit into us.
Is he your man?
No, not quite. He wasn't my man, but just to add, my man is nice. One he is lining up alongside Isaac Quainer. I went with Q this year. Fantastic premiership year in 2023. Got into the leadership in 2024 and was amongst many who had a bit of a down year. Excellent season last year for Isaac Quainer. I thought he was right back on track, awarded with the fact now he's back into the leadership group. Yeah. The reason why I've gone with him is because I feel like this is a point in Isaac Quainer's career where he's going from being that sort of young junior, flashing kid to now he's a real, not just a leader within our club, he's a senior figure. I think he's entering that phase now where he's not a senior as, a Darcy Moore or a Jeremy Howe, but he's very much on that path. And I think I'm just looking for him to really just have another solid year like he did last year. I think it's going to be really important for us. He's going to need to step up when we are missing Howe, Moore and the likes with young blokes coming into this side. I think it'd be really big for Q and really huge for us if he's able to really step into this leadership role, make it his own, and just run away like he did last year would be awesome.
Yeah, I think if you can get back to all Australian conversations by this time or by the end of the season, then
huge.
There's certainly,
and he doesn't necessarily need to explode on the back of last year's form, but I just think just to be able to repeat it after a couple of years where he's gone well, not so well, gone well. So just keeping up the good work.
Was also very solid as well yesterday in that North Melbourne game. So many players you could choose from for this category, and Dan was certainly one that I highlighted as well. But I think that's fairly obvious in the discussion we had on him was great. I'm with Jordan De Goey, who's also someone that seems to pop up in this category over the last few years. But injury-affected year last year. Missed a fair bit of footy. We saw what he could do in that qualifying final against Adelaide. Was one of our best in that match. Part of rumoured trade talks in the off-season, whether that was initiated by himself or his management or people in external media, it doesn't matter. He was still part of a conversation. I just think he is going to be so integral in 2026 in more ways than one. I think arguably more important than ever for him to have a uninterrupted year from an injury front. We had the discussion earlier in the episode about do we see some more forward time for Jordan De Goey. We had discussions last year about whether he even gets back into the side, knowing the amount of concerns he had on that front. And obviously we're very glad that he ended up doing so, despite probably a quieter preliminary final performance along with many. With a lot of players being rested and managed throughout the year, especially in that midfield with Scott Pendlebury and still side bottom, and the forward line still taking a little bit of shape with no Myercheck and Mason Cox. I just think if we can have Jordan De Goey there as a constant across the 2026 campaign, it is going to go a long way towards us retaining a spot in the finals and maybe even contending to go even further. He's just such a pivotal player to this team. He's still in an age bracket where he can have an impact, whether it is in the midfield or whether it is inside forward 50. He's got great ability. His presence on the field is so important, as we know. And I just truly believe that if he's unable to stay on the park for a consistent period of time, it is going to cause some issues with him in this side going forward. Not on ability or form, but just by the fact that can we rely on him to stay healthy and stay present on the field? I just really believe that this is the time for him to stand up. I'm not saying he has to get back to his 2018 or 2023 exploits, but we just need him to stay on the field first and foremost. I truly think with someone like Jordan De Goey, the rest would then take care of itself. But it's a massive year for him. I pray and pray and pray that he stays on the park because we're going to need him across the year.
And it's a massive year for how we just look at our side. I feel like someone like a Jordan De Goey, Nico, him going in and out of the side so frequently, it changes our whole structure, whether he's there or whether he's not, and what we're going to do with him. So important, as you said, just for him to just have a lot of consistent footy this year.
Yeah.
To your point, 10 seasons that Geordie's played, in only 4 of them has he eclipsed 20 games across that year.
Yeah.
And in the 2 seasons where he's played 21 games, guess which 2 seasons those were?
Yeah,
23.
18 and 23.
18 and 23. Yeah. So I think it really typifies the point that he's a core player. And when he's out there, we see the best of Collingwood or close to it on a consistent basis. But I do have some pessimism at the same time, Nico. 2025, 11 games. 2024, 13 games. So he's apparently had a much better pre-season and is looking the goods. But can he, over the marathon season that is the AFL in 2026.
Because we need to move on the reliance of him in that midfield and at times the forward line.
As with Pendles, as with Sidey.
If it's getting to a stage where he only gets on the field another 10 or 12 times this year.
Is it to the point though, and again, it's early in the year and we're a long way from the end of it and there's a lot to play out, but is it to the point where if he has another season like he had in 2025, 2024, where he struggles to get onto the park on a consistent basis, are we looking to trade him at the end of the year?
Oh, I wouldn't.
Contracted, isn't he?
His contract. I wouldn't go. I wouldn't go that far. I mean, it certainly needs to be a conversation, and I'm hesitant to discuss it further until we understand what the specifics of that would look like. Should we go down that path again by the end of the season? There's still some ability left in Jordan Ngoe, and the only way we're going to get every part of that is by him staying on the field. I get that some of it's out of his control. I understand that injuries do happen, but it just seems, as you mentioned before, Jack, there's a correlation between him not being on the field and us playing a consistent brand of football.
But are we going to see it if we're a crack at finals versus not a crack at finals? Because I reckon Geordie last season, the mentality would have been, obviously it's annoying that you're going to have to do more conditioning and stay off the park for longer so I can give you a run at it come later in the season. And in finals, he obviously showed up, not in the prelim, but he did have a good outing in the other game. And I just feel like that carrot has to be there for a guy like Geordie, who's a finals beast. He's built his prestige on performing in big matches. And so if we're tinkering around 9th or 10th and might be a chance at playing finals, but maybe we're not, do you think that influences the way that he's going to show up across the course of the season?
It shouldn't.
If a hip comes, or if it, but
it shouldn't, Marcus, because if we're going down that path, then why have we got him on the list if we're just relying on him to be present for a finals run? He needs to be more than that. I mean, there's stages. Yes, he's won games for us and he's been unbelievable at that stage of the season, but there is a transition starting to come. And I know that I still believe that we can contend this year, but if we go into, and I don't want to use the R word in rebuild, but if we're going to have a couple of down years later in this decade, are we unable to rely on him because he's trying to just be motivated by us playing finals? We're going to need him for more than that.
100%. I'm not saying that that's the only reason that he's going to be continuing his career at Collingwood, but what I am saying is that based on what we've seen in the last 2 seasons where he has unfortunately been hampered by injury, do we need to have these considered conversations about, is this blocking the development of another guy when we are coming into a critical transition period, Jack?
Yeah, which was the point I was trying to make before, is if when you've got a bloke like Jordan to go, he's not consistently on the park, it disrupts the development of younger players. Yeah. It disrupts even the conversation on, is he going to play in the midfield? Is he going to play in the forward line?
Yeah. What's that split?
The headache that we had last year when he was coming in and he was a designated going to get dragged at halftime for Bobby Hill. I'm still not over that, Nico, but this is he's a disruptive player. And I don't mean that in a negative sense, because he's disruptive because he's so bloody good. Yeah. So it's just we're at such a precarious stage in our evolution, and this is such an interesting point to watch over the course of the year, because at his best he is just about the most damaging player in the competition. He's right up there with your Isaac Heaney's, your Dustin Martins of yesteryear. He is that bloody good. He won us the flag in 2023. We've got a lot to thank him for. He's built for that big moment. But again, during the hustle and bustle of a season, and now reaching this very fine point that we're at, Marcus has got me thinking it's just a very precarious situation, Nico.
Yeah. Praying for a full season.
Fingers crossed. I mean, hopefully he plays all 23 games.
Well, speaking of players that won't be there next year, how many do we think will retire by season's end?
Yeah, look, I've got Howie.
Yep.
And I've got Pendles.
Yep.
But I don't have Steele.
Okay. Interesting. And your reasoning?
I think Steele is still interested in playing football for as long as he can, and if he's offered another contract for 1 year at the end of the season, that it would be in the Collingwood Football Club's best interest to phase some of these club legends, absolute club legends, out over a season or two. And if Steele's still got the drive and the hunger, I reckon I've heard him say about 12 times when he's been interviewed since he turned 30 that he's still not thinking about what he's going to do after footy. And I just think that him and Pendles, particularly leaving at the same time, would be good in some regard for fast-tracking development, but terrible on the other hand for the leadership and the culture.
I agree with you, and Steele's my favourite player, and I'd love to see him playing for as long as he can. Do you realistically think Collingwood would go down that path, or is it too early to say?
I think that we've got a unique problem where we've got the two guys who have played the most footy at a club that's been around for 100 and something years, both winding up at the same time. And it's one thing to have one of those guys leave and depart the club, likely Pendles after getting the games record this season. It's another thing to have his sort of sidekick leave at the same time. side bottom. But like it's one of those things that I've thought about for the last few years, and we've kind of wondered how long can this all go on for. We've got another flag out of them. Like there's so much juice again that's been coming out of these guys, and I just wonder if it wraps up at the same time or across a couple of seasons, Jack.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I never really thought of it that way. Hey, I thought it probably would. I had for the record, I had Howe, Pendles, and Steele retiring. I also threw in, before we go back to that point, I flew in, depending on how we go, and I think heavily dependent on their form, Membry and McStay are also entering that sort of, if McStay's not getting consistent enough games, is he going to hang around? And Memories, as much we've really did well with him last year. I thought just about the recruit of the year in terms of his age, demographic, and the role he was able to play. Is he going to be able to do that again? And if he doesn't have that same sort of year, what that looks like. But that's that was a bit of wishful thinking perhaps. But yeah, I kind of think the other way. I mean, I know he's played less games, and every time I say this, he just comes good. You could not have ever imagined Steele to have the year that he had last year. There was no way.
His first 12 games were maybe 10.
We were talking about him as a Brownlow contender.
He was in the half mid-year All-Australian squad for a lot of the media pundits out there.
So it was just it was unbelievable. And I think every time that I say that I'm ready for him to retire, the game's probably gone past him. He just pulls out something like that. So I think I try and not have an opinion on this anymore because he just keeps proving me wrong time and time again. I think if we're going to go down that path, and Marcus brings out an excellent point, because even within games, when you see them off the ground for a period of time, Pendles especially, we lose that conductor. Like we've always heard, from inside the four walls that he is like having another coach on the ground. And I used to think like, how much of that is true? But you can see it now, like with this group. You can see it as exactly right. Whenever they're not there, the hole that leaves for us is so big, and how much value would that have to have one of them at least hanging around for that extra 1 year, just to say, when we played for Pendles or when we played with Steele for that year, he showed us that we should do this in these moments, and so on and so forth. I probably have it the other way. I probably have Steele retiring this year, and if we're going to hold on to anyone, it'll be Pendles. And it's crazy to say, considering
500.
He's played as many games as he has, but like really, like the way he looks after himself, his professionalism, there's no reason why that 500 figure is completely out of reach. That's another 2 seasons of
450
of footy, but 450, as you said, at least would see next year, I believe, would be
no injuries.
450, no injuries. Maybe not getting rested every fortnight as well. But I'd probably say it the other way. But it is an excellent point that Marcus brings up, because it's not just their footy that we're going to miss out on; it's their leadership and their coaching as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The phasing out is what I agree with, Marcus. It certainly wouldn't be ideal to have them all leave at the same time. I just don't know if Collingwood are going to go down that path, especially I think if we don't either make the top 6 or have a deep run, there might be a push from above to start getting this sort of transition happening a lot quicker. So hence we might see some of those players be moved on. So I went Pendles and Howe as my certainties. I think Jeremy Howe, as much as we love him and as much as we rely on him, I just think the injuries are starting to catch up to him if they haven't already. And I just don't know that I just don't know if he can be relied upon to stay the course going forward. So my watch was on Steele purely on the basis that he's got that secondary position as a forward, as a backup. Should we need that leadership and experience in that area of the ground, then he's someone that can still have an impact by playing in the forward line for another year or two and giving us your 20, 30 goals a season. So I think that's why Steele Sidebottom's a maybe, also because he's my favourite player. And Tim Membry was the other one, and I agree with Jack. It's going to be hugely dependent on what the year brings for him and his role, and whether we still need to have him in the squad going forward. So they're the predictions. Very nice from all of you. Thank you very much. A very, very brief St Kilda preview, please. Just thought it'd be good to touch on it before we get to opening round. So we know Darcy Moore and we know Jeremy Howe both won't be playing on Sunday. They've all but been ruled out by fly. Max King won't play for the Saints. I think Liam Henry's the only other one that's iffy, whether he does suit up. But otherwise, they're recruits healthy. And everybody's ready. Silvani, he'll be fine from his concussion by then, so he should play. it's all been about the Saints and their big recruits and their splash to cash, and they're trying to improve. Ross Lyon said last week, this is a team that's hungry to improve. They're adamant they're going to improve. They've got a good mix of experienced players and young players. This is their first big test. A lot of eyes on them, 80, 90,000 at the MCG. I know that Collingwood gets spoken about a lot, and hence they're always going to be seen as the team under pressure in this scenario, but I really do feel this is all on St Kilda here, because they've got a point to prove. If they want to be seen as a side that will genuinely contend in 2026, well, then they've got to start from the outset and they've got to win this game. So, yes, there'll be a lot of talk on Collingwood if they don't win this match, but at the same time, I think the fact that the pressure's big on St Kilda coming into Sunday is a slight little advantage for us.
Yeah, and it's always the underdog status that teams prefer to take into a game that's being hyped up and being opening round. Of course, there's going to be plenty of eyes on what's happening at the MCG on Sunday night. I just also think that the Saints, just as another sidebar, the Saints having a lot of new guys come in at once, like what that does in terms of ironing out kinks and needing a bit of time together to develop understanding of one another's running patterns and how to link up. Naz and Liam Ryan were pretty impressive in the practice match on the weekend. So I think whoever goes to Wanganeen Millero is going to have a very busy night, because I'm very worried about that. But yeah, look, Nico, it's probably, I guess, the contrary to where we usually come into an opening round with more pressure on our backs. And I do wonder, Jacko, does Howe and Moore out of the side actually alleviate some of that pressure in a strange way?
100%. I think just with all the commentary around where we're at and where St Kilda's at, all the pressure is on St Kilda. I mean, you look at the two sides, I think they're like sort of meeting each other as like two elevators going in different directions kind of thing. You know, that everyone expects them, or, you know, has the pressure on them with all the movement they had in the off-season this season to, you know, propel themselves further up the ladder, and everyone expects us to go the other way. Like they probably almost expect us to do a complete switcheroo. Yeah. So yeah, I think this is it's a great, not a great thing. Sorry, it does alleviate that pressure. To your point, Marcus, not having Howe and Moore there, because we do look far more full strength with both those boys there, and if, you know, we were to lose badly with those two, it would really put the pressure on for the start to the season. So yeah, I'm excited for. I'm kind of going to this game with no expectation on Collingwood, because all the expectation feels like it's on St Kilda.
And I should add that it actually adds a lot of pressure, particularly to our defence, not having those guys out there. It's more about the mind games in the lead up to the match, and hopefully our Fly can harness that to our advantage, Nico.
Playing in front of a massive crowd, Nico, you know, St Kilda aren't used to that. They're, you know, lucky to get 30,000. Again, no offence to St Kilda, but it's their home game, and there will be predominantly Collingwood
They've
supporters.
asked for this, Jack.
They're exactly right. Well, they've asked this because we're the biggest show in town, mate, and they all ask for it. And you know, everyone hates Collingwood because we only play in Melbourne, but we also prop up the AFL because we just drag that many people to the footy. So, but I'm really looking forward to it. Heaving MCG should be on Sunday before Labor Day.
Yes, it's going to be very exciting. Any newies from our side that we expect to suit up on Sunday? I think we mentioned before Jack Bull is all but likely to play. Joel Cochran seems likely at this stage. Is there anybody else? Do we give Charlie West a crack?
Well, he was the other one that impressed me. I thought that he had a lot more toe than I thought he had for a big key forward. So he was very quick off the mark, and saw him chasing defensively, which I really liked for a big forward. So he's the only other one that potentially gets the nod. But the other two for me are the ones that'll pull on the black and white at senior level for the first time, Jack.
And sitting here initially now, after, you know, hearing Charlie West's name, it's like, all right, well, is he going to be able to find his way into this team? But we don't have a Myercheck and a Cox now in their way. So there's a very likely scenario where Buller and West play up in the forward line. Probably not that likely, but again, unlike yesteryear where there was all these hurdles for them to get past, like it was Mason Cox, Dan McStay, Tim Membry, all so on and so forth. And a few of them boys been taken out now. It really changes that dynamic. So you could see a world in which we go Charlie West and Jack Buller. But apart from that, I think Buller, Cochran, and who was the other one that you mentioned?
No, they were
the two main ones. They were probably those were probably the newbies. I didn't mind Dimatia's game the other day. I know
probably not yet though.
But not the right game. I feel like we also there's not a position vacant for him to step into. But again, I think speaking about players that it's a big year for, he was a high draft pick, a couple of years ago now, and he's yet to play senior game again, a battle with injuries a little bit as well. But he's one I'll be watching and keen to see in the senior side in times to come.
With 5 on the bench, I thought maybe Oscar Steen gets a conversation about whether he takes place in this side.
Yep.
Do we think there's a possibility there?
Well, they've got De Koning that can play ruck, Marshall, and who's the other big fella?
Well, they would have had King if he was playing, I guess, but
that's another guy.
not really.
Can't remember his name right now, but they're tall, is what I'm saying, and I think we have to expect DC, Dan McStay to probably start and do some ruck work, and then who's that third guy? Potentially in defence, but otherwise, Steen could be a guy that's also played quite a bit of VFL footy and might be thrown in to show his worth.
And there's a lot of chat, Nico, with this 5 on the bench now that fifth man's going to be used, very, sparingly is the word I'm looking for. 50% game time. I was talking to mates yesterday. Apparently that's what Freyo's going to do with Coxie. He's really only going to play half the game and come on in spurts just to, help out where he can. It's like the active sub role it seems like it's going to be, which is just the most on that. That is just like, we just keep going this vicious circle with this sub thing. We sack the best, we go to extra men on the bench, more rotations, and then we're back to medical subs, and now it's tactical subs. Now the sub's gone. Yeah, I don't know. We'll be back at sub in a couple of years, let me tell you.
Well, they're playing Luke Jackson as a midfielder now, pure on baller. So
Coxdown and Jackson.
Oh, gee. Be good for my super coach. Just a quick one as well. So on the opening round concept, and we talked about the pressure and the expectation being on St Kilda coming into this match. Last year proved that opening round doesn't have to set the tone for the season.
Really?
Yeah. Well, pretty morbid after that GWS game, but I think we could all agree on that. But obviously we went on to have some really strong performances and finish top 4 and make a preliminary final, etc. Obviously, still very incredibly important to get off on the right foot and have a win to start the campaign. But knowing how last year fared out, does that play on your mind at all to say that if we don't win on Sunday, is it doomsday? Is it panic stations? Is it the season's going to be a bust, or do we just need to give it a little bit more time before we make a proper assessment?
I think I gave my opinion before. I'm looking for 6 to 8 weeks as usual, and I'm not going to be putting any hot takes on our list or particular players until we've had a body of work. I say the same thing at the start of every season. It's very tempting to just go and say, whack this bloke, whack that bloke, we're not good enough, this, that. But if it's, I can't remember a season where we've had such a strange complexion for our list. Like we've had such a blessed sort of 5 to 6 years with a pretty solid list, and then we've traded a high draft pick and brought in 1 or 2 players, and it's looked pretty settled for a long time. Not so settled this year, Jack.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I agree with Marcus, Nico. It's after last year, opening round means nothing. But also, I think it's the way you lose and who you lose to. Last year, we got blown away by what at the time was a really good GWS side. They looked like a well-oiled machine. I had front row tickets for it, and it was a dark day at the footy, let me tell you. But at the same time, I think if this game's a bit of like a tussle or, not a very highly skilled game and we get blown away off the park, I think the pressure will come. Not so much from myself, but I think certainly externally the pressure will come if St Kilda aren't as highly rated as what GWS were after they beat us so convincingly last year. So it's the way you lose and who you lose to, I think, is a big point to take out of the first early games of the year. But on round 0, can we just get rid of it? It's just the biggest. It sucks. It's nice to have footy back this week, and it's nice to be participating. And I'm really looking forward to getting to the G on Sunday. But at the same time, I still just can't wrap my head around it. Like we should all be starting at the same time. We're trying to compete with a league in the NRL that we're already miles ahead of anyway. So I'm a big just get rid of round 0, back to round 1.
So basically, if we win by 10 goals on Sunday, I can't celebrate.
Round 0 is here to stay.
I'm just joking. It's going to stay for sure. All right, margin Monday headline, please.
Oof. Well, I said we were going to lose.
You did too.
Pies by 18. Have to do that.
That's good.
Oh, God. Monday headline. Can we do our margins, go around the margins and give me time to think?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go Pies by 11, Nico. if we're going to win, I feel like it's going to be very similar to that round 1 game in 2023. Bit of an arm wrestle, maybe break away, that 2 or 3 goal margin would be nice. Generally the way we get it done against the Saints. I do have a headline for you that just popped into my head. St Kilda, ? No, St Nicholas. He'll get the 3 votes.
Very nice. Brownlow watch activated.
We get back on that this year. Marcus, you taking charge on the Brownlow watch?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, very good. 26 points. We'll win by. Just because I think if we win, we'll win well. There's not really much to it, I would have thought. I know you said we'll lose, Marcus. I think this is a game that we should be winning. I really do, regardless of how and more being out and the big names coming in for the Saints. I still think we're a better team. As I have discussed many times earlier in the pod, I just think we should be winning, and I think we can win it comfortably enough.
Okay.
My headline is Tasmania bump offer for Nick to $3 million a year because he will just dominate so much on Sunday, and he'll run ragged, have his 40 touches, and he will be reminding many that he's still the number 1 player in the competition.
I'll go with DeGoey destroys the Saints in round 0, 27-2. Champ is back.
Love it. He's done it before as well against them.
27-2 would be magical. We're all going?
Yep.
I'll be away, so I'm shattered. Yeah, I can't believe footy season starts so early. Once again, it's crazy, but it's a long season, so happy it's back.
All right. Well, I'm sure you'll hear us from the G. That's for sure. Jack, Marcus, thank you again for another episode. Can't wait to hear these predictions in 6 months' time. They're going to be lots of fun. But let's hope the Pies get that big win to start off the year on Sunday night. Until then, I've been Nicholas Sacco. You've been listening to or watching the Pies Nation podcast, where the Pies are hot and the drinks are cold.